Hello everybody. Thank you for the warm applause. Thank you for the warm welcome. And the panel today, or our panel, will be dedicated to growing techniques. With ever-tightening regulations and oversight related to cultivation, our panel of elite industry scientists and growers will discuss topics ranging from regenerative farming and breeding to organic pesticides and microbiological screening methods, as they relate to more stringent and evolving testing requirements. The ICBC invited 5 leading experts, but I have to admit, due to unforeseeable circumstances, we are only 4 people today. Tom could not come, Farmer Tom could not come, and he likes to say hello to the audience, to the ICBC, and sorry that he could not come. But still, I think we have 4 leading experts from the growing industry who can give us a very unique or very good insight into the legal cannabis industry in the USA, in Canada. And I am proud to introduce people from big companies, people from the grassroots movement, people from our growers from the science. It's also not only about growing, it's also about science and research about cannabis growing. And I want to start with Pete. Hello, Pete.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us today.
Pete is a co-owner of Root RX. It's a recreational marijuana dispensary with 6 locations across the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Pete brings 30+ years of growing knowledge to his current profession, from his involvement in operating indoor and outdoor cannabis grows across the country for recreational and medical purposes. He has experience working with traditional and alternative growing mediums and running operations that use both natural and artificial light. In addition to the growing side of the cannabis business, Pete has deep understanding of the retail aspect from managing stores in Aspen and Vail, Colorado. He brings a comfortable and relaxed attitude to a high-pressure industry, and his welcoming qualities make him an approachable resource for all things about cannabis. And my first question, Pete. In Germany, the regulations for growing and medical cannabis do not allow to grow medical cannabis in greenhouses or even outdoor. And according to Colorado requirements, can you fulfill the standards for medical grade cannabis in greenhouses or even outdoor, and how can you achieve that?
So we've been growing in greenhouses now since 2014. And what we have found is that in a high-tech, energy-efficient greenhouse, which we now have, that these things are possible. We are regulated by several bodies in Colorado. We're regulated by the Marijuana Enforcement Division, which gives us licensing and sets fines and fees as far as infractions of rules in Colorado. And we're also regulated by the Department of Agriculture at a state level. And we're also regulated by the Health and Safety Department for Colorado. And between these 3 entities, we have to adhere to very high standards of microbial contaminations, microbial poison as far as pesticides and those types of things. And because this is a foodstuff, because we're feeding people this and people are inhaling this, we're held to a very high standard. And I guess my point being is that in the right greenhouse environment, we can achieve the same level of quality and the same standards that you would in a warehouse. In Germany, I guess we're not, you folks are not able to grow in greenhouses yet, but I see that as an evolution, and at some point in the next several years, you're going to have that opportunity. In Colorado right now, because it is so competitive, there are so many growers in the market, it all gets down to cost. And at some point in time, you're going to realize that greenhouses and outdoor grows for especially oils and extracts and that type of thing are the only way that you'll survive the market. Hope that answered it.
Yeah, thank you very much for the insight, and I think I come to Colin now. Colin, hello Colin. Colin is co-founder and co-inventor of Chief Growth Officer at Growth Sentia. He's completed his studies in soil microbiology, ecology, sorry, complicated word for me. And as a research scientist at Colorado University, Colin published dozens of peer-reviewed publications that were focused on microbial-mediated processes that enhance plant growth. Sorry that I have to read that from the document. Colin left his academic position at Colorado State University in March 2015 and launched Sentia. Sentia is a young startup company in the AG tech sector that develops microbial and soil additives that sustainably increase plant yield across many crops, which in easy words is to say in easy words, you develop products that replace fertilizer and that replace artificial fertilizing and fertilizing in general. And so my first question is, may I ask you to explain that in easy words, you replace classic fertilizers and organic nutrition, and may I ask you to explain the basic principle of it?
Sure, thanks everyone for being here. As a scientist at the university focused on agricultural and soil health and microbial ecology in general, we know as scientists and we know as agriculture specialists that it's critical to deliver nutrients to plants. We know that's really a challenge, nutrient use efficiency in agriculture systems as it is in the cannabis industry. And we started focusing on natural microbial technologies that can maximize the plant's ability to take up nutrients, maximizing nutrient use efficiency for many nutrients so plants can naturally maximize their health, development, quality, and yield. So the goal of our team, we started at the university and now we've bridged and we focus 100% on the cannabis industry, is bringing natural microbial solutions to cultivators so we can naturally enhance plant quality and plant yield, again using natural processes, which we think is important not only for cannabis but for all agriculture segments.
Okay, thank you, and I'll come back later and to more details. Now I want to introduce Michael. Michael is Vice President of Conviron, and he's the world-leading designer and supplier of controlled environments for plant growth rooms in the plant research and AG biotech sectors. And you have installed thousands of facilities around the world over the last decades. Or your company has installed a lot of facility around within the last years. And you are leading the expansion into the cannabis sector of your company. So my first question to you is, how do the regulations for Germany regarding standardization influence the design of cannabis grow rooms in general?
Great, thank you. First of all, thanks everyone for hanging around for this last session. Looking forward to just a few more minutes with you today. One first lesson I learned is have a longer introduction and use bigger words in my intro so that I can match some of these guys here. What I wanted to just open up here with was the interesting aspect of the regulations in Germany and their focus on standardization. And that comes back to our company very well because the way we approach the world of growing and growing cannabis is to provide solutions that create environments that really lead to standardized outcomes of plants. And what we see is that the level of control is what really drives the outcomes of plants. So if you want standardized results, standardized phenotypes, the standardized chemical outcomes or physical properties of the plants, you really need to zero in on control. And so that control comes from two different aspects. One is really the brains behind the operation, which means the control system itself, and also the body of the grow system, which is all the electrical and mechanical components, the HVAC, and irrigation and fertigation systems as well. And I was trying to explain that to someone in a situation like this a while ago, and it was like a professional athlete. And that athlete understood it when I said, well, you need the brains that are sharp and adaptive and flexible and robust, but you also need the body with the muscles and the bones that can be responsive to those controls. And so when you put together both the brain and the body, you have a system then that will allow you to control the growth so that you can end up with standardized results, which is really what the German regulations are focused on right now.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cem, let me introduce you. And plus you're also very involved in environment control as well. And Tramm is a serial interpreter who, with 2 successful businesses that were handed over to management, to solely focus on changing the way the planet feeds and grows itself. It's a nice bio. And Cem is focusing on patented dehumidification, IoT solutions, and other environmental technologies. His goal is making his company, Enumera, a world-leading smart greenhouse solution provider for the cannabis industry. And as we talked in advance before the panel, your whole family is also involved in the greenhouse business. So your whole family is very experienced in the greenhouse business.
We have an agricultural background, and we're more focusing on the cannabis industry now.
Exactly, and so the cannabis you also experienced in other sectors. So my first question to you is, what do you think the biggest impact of tightening regulations is in the industry? Or what do you think is the biggest impact of tightening regulations in this industry?
First of all, thanks for having us here on this panel today. I think the tightening in regulations pushed growers and consultants in Europe and in the States to be more careful about energy consumption and how they design the greenhouse, especially water consumption and electricity consumption. This is now beginning to have a more of a serious law, which needs to be taken care of on a very high level. So, as actually Michael said, to standardize the way you grow is really important that you use innovative ways and best techniques to be able to achieve this.
Okay, and when we're talking about standardizing growing, my next question comes to Pete. In Denver, after the regulation, odor was a regular source for trouble producers had with authorities. I remember that there were a lot of reports in the newspapers. So we do not only talk about a controlled environment, but we also talk about a controlled odor neighborhood. So is that also, how can you achieve that? Or is that as complicated to achieve as a controlled environment, to have the controlled neighborhood, the odor problem?
That's a great question. And so folks that are working in urban areas and are specifically have grows in urban areas, real challenge, right? Because that technology is just started. And so what we came up with, and I'll make this a pretty quick answer, was we came up with carbon filters. And we basically designed and implemented these carbon filters on our own. We could have gone to manufactured carbon filters, but it was just cost prohibitive for us to do that. So we came up with designs of our own accord and implemented those designs and created several carbon filter system to go ahead and mitigate as much odor as possible. Can we get zero odor? I don't know if that's achievable with carbon. I think there is folks in the near future that are going to come up with solutions for odor, but with carbon, I don't know if that's achievable. And the other part of that question, I think, is that it's about community outreach, too, at the end of the day. If the folks in your community see you as somebody that's bad, somebody that's doing terrible things to the community, then there's almost a placebo effect of what you're doing. And people will say, I smell cannabis. They may not smell cannabis, but they'll say that they're smelling cannabis because it's very easy to go to a local official and say, I smell cannabis. It's almost like I see a communist. So it has that effect on people. If you go out in the community and you present yourself in a positive manner, if you embrace the community, if you have your local community as part of your labor solution, not a challenge, but your labor solution, then all of a sudden they're spending money in the community, they're spending money that they're making in your greenhouse or your grow facility. That goes a long way, and that has very long legs as far as the people seeing you in a positive light. And when people see you in a positive light, they're always willing to give you a little bit more leeway. So I would say that it's a twofold answer there.
May I ask you an additional question about this topic? I saw in Germany there were some reports about a guy running around with it looked like a big bag in front of his face, and he was called the nasal sheriff. Is that true? Is that existing in Denver?
Yeah.
From the authority, somebody with a machine in front of his face, and he measures the odor. Is this really existing?
So we do have that in Denver. We've got that actually up by Aspen also. There was a greenhouse that was having challenges with odor in Aspen, or right outside of Aspen. And there is a machine that will actually, on some objective level, and I use that kind of tongue-in-cheek, measure the smell or the organics in the air. But how subjective is that, okay? Which way is the wind blowing? How hard is the wind blowing? Did it rain the night before? Is it not rained in 5 or 6 days? So there's all kinds of elements to that smell meter, if you will, being accurate. And again, I would suggest, doing the best you can with mitigating the smell itself, and then also going out in the community and being the best neighbor you possibly can be.
May I add something, Pete, to this? We've been designing a lot of facilities in the middle of the city, in Zurich, for example, in Switzerland, and this is actually a really big problem. So we dived into it a little bit, and now we have great research happening all around the world. Actually, there is research on how to trap odor. We also use HEPA and carbon filters. They do work, but to a certain extent, and there is a bunch of other natural ways of trapping odor as well. Odor is a molecule, and we deal with water molecules in the air, so you can also manipulate this as well. So I believe with companies like yours and others, we're gonna get to more sufficient technologies regarding odor trapping.
And I absolutely agree with that, and I would tell people that are looking to get into the industry that ancillary type of companies, there's an old saying in the gold mining business that it wasn't the guys that were mining gold that made the money, it was the guys selling the picks and shovels. And I would suggest that that is a great place for folks to get involved, is odor mitigation, because there is probably going to be some water solutions, as you alluded to. There's probably going to be some type of ionization solutions out there in the future. So again, this is an evolving industry. We are on the cutting edge. The folks that are getting into it now are on the ground floor, and there's all kinds of opportunity out there, especially in places like odor mitigation.
Okay, thank you very much. And now my next question goes to Colin. Colin, you're dedicated your research to soil. And I read within the last years, I read a lot of publications, and in some publications you can read that rock wool or other hydroponic media are more suitable for a controlled environment. Would you agree on that?
I'm not sure if I agree or disagree. I know that I visit grows all over the U.S., all through South America, all through Europe, and I've visited hundreds, even thousands of commercial grows, and engage in the industry 100%. That's what I do. I go around and do discovery and learn and try to figure out where there's value to be made and bringing value to growers, commercial growers. There's a lot of commercial growers that are using rock wool in Denver and Washington State, all over the world. But there's many, many that aren't, and there's trade-offs. And I think there's no one silver bullet solution in agriculture. There's no one silver bullet solution in cannabis cultivation, and there's trade-offs with every decision we make. I think in some cases, one can feel that there is a more controlled aspect to having a very inert substrate or media like rock wool, but I do think that there are some trade-offs with respect to interacting with the plant, to engaging the plant's full phenotypic potential, and delivering to that plant what it needs. Many growers, and this is a huge movement, especially through the Pacific Northwest, especially through South America, and more even in Europe, people understand, growers understand that we need to start reproducing soil function and interactions with microbes, and these effects really maximize the plant phenotypic potential, meaning not only do we need in today's cannabis industry, and I'll speak of it generally in a global level, to maximize yield, to bring value to growers, but quality comes up everywhere we go now. And yield, although it's very important, quality has to happen. And you're going to distinguish yourself as a cultivator, and I've heard it from growers and consumers here in Germany, through a quality aspect. And so not only is these inputs important, but environment's important, and energy is important. All these things that we're talking about on this panel are interacting to maximize not only plant yield, to bring value to farmers, but also plant quality, which is critical for distinguishing yourself and maximizing the value of your product.
Thank you very much. Michael, Colin just told us there are several ways to grow cannabis on several mediums, and you build up dozens of facilities worldwide. It's not only the medium that differs. How do the facilities differ from each other you build up?
Right. I think what we've seen as we travel around the world and see different facilities is the vast diversity of how people approach designing their facilities. So they're looking at using different technologies and different design configurations. So if we set aside the greenhouse side, which is not my area of expertise right now, but from an indoor growing facility perspective, what we see is vast diversity in the lighting that is chosen, whether that's LED or HPS or other forms of lighting. We see people wanting to have very distinct indoor environments for the different stages of growth of the plants, so from clone to veg to flowering to even drying. And they also want to look at different solutions for how they grow, whether that's hydroponics, aeroponics, in multiple tiers, or just in a single tier of plants. And so we see this wide range of diversity, and all these elements have to be anticipated in the design of an indoor growing room. And so what we do is we see how these elements come together, and what we really see success is when we can create a highly uniform environment so that all the plants within that environment are growing at the same rate and they're maturing at the same time throughout the room. So whether it's the back corner or the front of the room, everything is maturing at the same rate. So you get that uniformity not only of yield and outcome, but also in the specific properties of the plant. And one of the ways that we see that varying from room to room is how different people handle airflow. So we look at how to direct air in different directions to accommodate the different growing systems that the grower is going to choose. In general, we strive for a very uniform and laminar flow of air, but oftentimes the way the growing system is configured, we have to work around that as well. So the diversity of the growing techniques has a big impact on how rooms are ultimately designed.
Thank you very much, and let me just come to the next question about growing rooms, or how to fulfill the standardization best way. Cem, what do you think, what do you foresee as the upcoming trends in the near future regarding automation and standardization in the grow room?
There is so much innovation happening in the world and in the sector. My expertise is more airflow, water usage, and air circulation, actually, like Michael mentioned, and how we can extract the water that the plants are transpiring, and how we can reuse the energies inside, as in latent energy. And It's also as automated though, as automation. It's now I'm seeing that there are lots of automation in benches. There's automation in everything now. But IoT is a very important part of the design. I think everything should collect data, and you should be able to see how well your automation is working and the outcome. Because doing the automation is something, but also seeing the outcome positively is so important. What you use for what automation. So I guess it's something to do with the idea of the grower, what exactly they want to achieve, and then you can use the automations regarding to the topics they want.
When we first met today, you told me a very interesting detail I've never heard so much about yet, because I know that the humidity in the grow rooms is a big problem, and you found a way to suck out the humidity out of the air.
Yeah, so we patented.
That's kind of very new and
yeah, we patented a way to basically discharge latent energy. Usually the systems around the world they convert latent energy, which is the secret energy inside the grow chambers, into sensible heat. So there's always an unwanted heat inside. So what we do is we don't challenge this. We just discharge it outside with another medium we use, which is a liquid desiccant. And this is how we actually reduce operation costs. This is how we control total humidity and temperature. And this is how we also recycle the water that we capture inside the grow house and reuse it in irrigation.
It's kind of a nearly closed system.
Yes.
Very interesting. Thank you. And my next question goes to Pete. Pete, you're also a shop owner. So how important is standardization of the products for your business and your customers from a shop owner's perspective?
A great question. So, and I think we've kind of talked about that in some of these environmental control questions also. So we are looking to standardize all the time. We are looking to strive to that place where every time we harvest a certain genetics that we get the same results. Do we do that every time? Well, of course not, because everything changes almost on a minute-to-minute basis. Air changes, humidity changes, sunlight changes, artificial lighting changes, CO2 content changes. But to the best of our ability, as much as we can, with our environmental controls, with our knowledge about growing cannabis, that is what we try to achieve, where all of our plants are growing as standard or as close to being standard as possible.
Thank you very much. And in that context, my next question goes to Michael. Pete just told us about humidity in the grow room and other critical climate control. And what are the critical design elements that must be considered in any growing environment? I mean, you design the room, so how do you achieve that? Or what do you have to put in any room?
Right, I think I leapt to the answer to that question in the last time I spoke. So I won't repeat too much, other than, of course, lighting, temperature, and humidity are the big factors that need to be controlled, especially in any environment, of course, but particularly in an indoor environment. But what I was wanted to leverage that into is just following on from Pete talking about hitting standards by controlling the environment, that whether it's greenhouse or indoor. One of the things that we see, especially in the experience in Canada, and also in the States, but there is a lot of testing, a lot of hurdles that every product has to go through. And so it's not as though there's no standardization requirements, but as the industry becomes more and more competitive, I think that growers are going to be looking for more ways to standardize the way they differentiate their product. Not just passing the tests of safety and health and making sure all the microbial counts are where they should be, but also if you find a way to differentiate your product from the perspective of taste, smell, or experience, then you want to be able to dial that recipe into your operation. And so having that ability, whether it's doing a greenhouse grow or more particularly an indoor grow, you want to have that ability to control the light, the spectrum, the intensity, to manage the humidity properly, and also to be able to control all those other things like additive CO2 and all your nutrients as well.
Thanks. And Colin, you also know a lot about setting up the whole environment for the plants, and there are a lot of regulations where you have your business. So, and how far do the different regulations in different states and different countries facilitate or hinder your business?
That's a pretty fun topic, and that makes my job pretty fun. As I go everywhere I go, it's a new puzzle to solve. Every state in the U.S. has different regulatory pressures, so to speak, if it's chemical or microbial, and it's really important for those growers to be able to follow those. I think overall it's standard. There's testing labs, and growers can follow that. I think the real challenge with cultivation in general is mitigating variability. And what you want to do, and this is what has been talked about more than anything else, I think, while we're up here, is consistency, repeatability, and reducing variability so you can dial in the same product time and time again. And if growers can do that, I think that's the biggest challenge. And we talk about, you can use a simple phenotype formula. What we're dealing with is precision agriculture, and everything should be defined as precise as possible, always. And that's a simple phenotype formula, maximizing our plant quality and yield to the ideals that we want based on dialing in our plant genetics over time, our environment and inputs over time. And that's critical, but one thing that people overlook pretty bad in many cases is workflow and turnover, because people create variability, and there's a lot of costs associated with workflow that's underestimated, and a lot of error and variability that's introduced into growing because of that. And so not only do we have to dial in all these technical details in the infrastructure and climate and repeatable inputs, but we have to have our SOPs in place, and we have to dial in how we're growing so we're not wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. I've worked in some grows that were very efficient that had 3 growers, and I've worked with other grows that didn't seem very efficient that were about the same size that had 20. That's a huge cost, and then that variability and turnover is just incredible, and it creates a lot of error with respect to the end product over time.
Is there any regulation you prosper from, except that it's legal?
I think we all prosper from regulation. It's important. I think that there's some regulation. The challenge with regulations is the regulators aren't growers. They're typically not microbiologists. They're typically not chemists. They're people that are following the rules and are getting informed, and sometimes getting informed from people that aren't that informed. And so when you look at some of these rules and regulations, they're generalities that create a lot of pressure and extra cost for cultivators. And I think it's important at this stage because this plant, this crop is way more regulated than any other food crop in the world. However, it's consumed very differently than the other food crop in the world, and I understand those pressures. You talk to the health department in Colorado, for example, we're very concerned about pesticide use. There's a lot of pesticide use and it's regulated heavily. The same pesticides are used on a lot of food crops that's not regulated heavily. But we aren't combusting potatoes when we consume them. We're combusting this plant. We're not extracting and concentrating potato extract where we are with this plant. And even non-trace amounts of some chemicals can concentrate into potentially toxic amounts. And so this is a very different beast. And health and regulators in general are treating it very thoughtfully right now. And so I think it's important to work with regulators and educate them to understand where these thresholds of true risk are versus education opportunities to mitigate that.
So my next question goes to Cem. Cem, your family's experience in agriculture all over the world in building up greenhouses. So we did not talk about feeding the plants yet. And I know that most people, most cannabis patients want to have a clean product. In how far does a clean product and biological organic growing fit together with a controlled environment? Is that possible to make an organic product, 100% organic product, in a controlled environment?
The word organic is actually it's a very general word, I would say. But of course it is possible. We've been working with grow owners that are shooting for to be more organic, to use less water, to use no pesticides, even aquaponics is now very popular in Europe regarding cannabis. Aeroponic growings, you see, so all of the mediums do change with the type of growing systems that people are trying to have and achieve. But regarding standardization, it's important what outcome comes from these facilities. So I think time is still needed to actually see what's going on, and I also think that data collection is really important regarding questions like this, because you need to prove as well how you achieved it. It's not just how you did it, but you need to be able to show what was your environmental conditions, how you actually got into producing something more organic.
Thanks, and let's just go deeper into it. The additional question, how do you achieve that? How do you document that? You make a documentation about your progresses?
Well, we have a software that keeps track of anything, any electrical equipment inside your facility. So you can go back a year back to any month, to any hour, to any day, and
you can monitor a single plant with it, for example?
Yeah, you can even monitor single plants with leaf growth even. There's many automations and many systems where you can collect data from. It's up to how many sensors you have. We usually use 35 sensors in one room, and you can basically go to any time of your grow facility and see what your condition was in and prove it, to be honest.
So this is also, documentation is also a very, very important part of standardization, ain't it?
It is.
I hate to interrupt, but we're almost, it's me. Hello, I'm right here in the front. Hello.
Yeah, I just want to...
I'm hard to notice.
A very, very last question to Pete, because I saved this question till the end, and it's a slightly controversial question, and you have the most experience from everybody here. You are a long time in the cannabis scene and fought for legalization. And my general question to you is a little bit controversial, but how much regulation does cannabis need?
I think it needs a lot at the end of the day. And the reason I say that is because we want to embrace the public, and we want the public to be our partners in this. Without the public, without the guy that's your neighbor and the guy that's across the street from you, we don't succeed at this. At the end of the day, we have to have the general public say this is going to be safe, this is going to be something that we can consume without being hurt, and it has to be something that is not going to affect our children. So if we embrace standardization, if we embrace regulation, that is our best way forward. And I can't stress that enough. And from folks that are going to be part of this industry, it really sets us apart. It sets us apart on so many different levels. But more than anything, it makes us better at what we do, because the more regulations we have, the better we'll be at this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a nice final word. Is there any more questions?
Yeah, we have maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to start here, and then we'll see who you.
Colin, I didn't hear much detail about microbial or biodynamic or alternatives to fertilizers. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, in brief, and we can talk more about it offline, actually microbials are the quickest growing agriculture segment within all industries because we understand that microbes and interacting microbes in soil and substrates help maximize nutrient use efficiency, so it's critical. We also know, and you talk to a lot of growers specifically for this industry, it's becoming very popular in the United States. I mean, quickly, I started my company a couple years ago, and now we just got Product of the Year in the UK. We're in over 800 shops in the US. We're in over a couple hundred shops in Europe and all through South America because microbes have expanded. Even 2 years ago, I had to educate everyone. That's my job as education and support, like it was at the university as a PhD microbiologist. It's the same thing now, but I'm focused on the cannabis industry and educating growers now. It's important. I think, plants in nature don't exist without microbial interactions. None. And so interacting and bringing those microbial processes and interactions back into precision agriculture, I think does a lot, not only to maximize value as far as yield and quality, but to bring these interactions that might not be present to the degree that they need to be, and maximize, again, the plant's ability to express some of these quality factors that we really see. If you add microbes into a grow, we see the improved terpene profiles and improved yields, and so this quality metric really goes up along with yield. And so there's a lot of value that we think that we can bring in general across all agriculture segments by incorporating microbes, not replacing fertilizers. I don't think that's what we're trying to do, and I don't think that's realistic. In some soil environments where there is a buildup of nutrients, you can actually really reduce fertilizer inputs and replace them with microbial solutions. But in precision agriculture, you're never going to displace completely fertilizer applications. You're going to complement nutrients with microbe life, with microbial functionality.
Right.
Hello. My question is for you as well. Are you thinking about using microorganisms for pest control as well, especially since we heard California has such great problems with pesticides, like killing one fungi with another fungi might be a good idea. Are you searching for that?
Yeah, we are. We think that's a really interesting solution because there are so many problems in this industry in particular with chemical solutions, and growers in general are really limited to the solutions they have to control pests, and pests are a huge problem. Russet mites, spider mites, powdery mildew, depending on where you are, fungal gnats. There's a lot of problems, especially in monocrops and controlled environments, and if we don't have the right solutions, there's a lot of value to control those, and controlling those naturally is important. So we still have resources at Colorado State University. We have several 5,000 square foot greenhouses and a 62-acre farm that we grow cannabis on, all for agricultural research purposes, so we can look for new solutions, not only for new nutrient or biostimulant solutions, but also for biocontrol solutions. So that's what we're talking about, bringing natural solutions for control aspects as well. So we absolutely think that's important, and we are doing that.
Okay, one last one. Go.
One of the stigmas that are often attached to cannabis is that it can cause psychosis, craziness, madness. I watched a documentary, Blackfish, what happens when you take an orca out of its wild, natural environment. The more we take cannabis out of its natural environment, generations down the line, do you feel there could be a problem with increased psychosis with the more cloned, chemically fed, or, it's an unnatural environment, possibly create unnatural plants?
How can I answer that? I think that that's possible. I think that you genetically modify any crop that you can run into unexpected outcomes. And since cannabis, and especially active THC, is psychotropic, is that a potential? It absolutely is a potential, I would say.
Great, I think that's it. I think we're going to leave it right there. Let's hear it for the panel once again. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out. That concludes the second annual International Cannabis Business Conference right here in Berlin. You can still get tickets for Vancouver, which will be in June. And then we are going to be in Portland, Oregon in September. So come to that as well. Thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate it on behalf of Alex Rogers and everyone else at the International Cannabis Business Conference. Auf Wiedersehen.